Can sustainable medical plastic solutions be economically viable without increasing the product's cost? To answer this question, I brought in Bastien Manuel. Bastien is the commercial director at elm-plastic and responsible for innovation and business development. elm-plastic just launched their first sustainable product, namely this sustainable pharmaceutical pipette, exclusively made from bio-sourced materials. In this episode, you're going to learn how the sustainable pharmaceutical pipette was developed in practice, how volume, scale, and long-term contracts change the cost equation, and how early movers in sustainable medical plastics are positioning themselves for future regulatory and market shifts. My name is Ilkus Benegonda, and I've helped over 40 MedTech companies to be more sustainable with plastics, and here's our conversation. Hi, Bastien, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Lucas. Nice to see you here, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, so Bastien, you're the commercial director at elm-plastic. And before we dive into the pipette and what you did with that, just give us a brief overview over what elm-plastic does and where you sit in the value chain of, I would say, the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lucas. So elm-plastic is the company I work for. elm-plastic is a Germany-based family-owned company. We are technically a converter of plastic raw material into different pharma solutions, typically medical devices for the oral dosing applications and veterinary primary packaging devices. So oral dosing for human pharma and veterinary are slightly different. Today, we're going to concentrate on the human pharma co-pack items. Our items are classified as Class 1 co-pack devices, and that is why we think it is so relevant. So our product is technically the gatekeeper between the actual drug to the patient. So our products are taken into the mouth. They are the very intimate product in direct contact with the patient.
Okay, so we will talk about this pipette. I brought one. You gave it to me at Pharma Pack, and I brought it for the podcast. So this became a little bit of your, I'd say, flagship project. So walk us through how this idea came about and how you did the project and how you came to this very beautiful solution here.
Yeah, and the good part about this is that is our business case where we tested all the different materials. And in the evolution of looking into our portfolio, we have all the accessories also in biomaterial for human pharma. And in the veterinary range is also completely available now in bioplastics. So your question was, how did we get into sustainability? And above all, we have to say that in our heritage at elm-plastic, we have a long tradition in looking into more sustainable solutions. So it's something which is embedded basically in our DNA. If we go back 25 years, around the year 2020, 2021 roughly, we changed our complete machine park in the manufacturing from old type hydraulic machines into new style electric run machines. And with that change, not in 1 year, but in the course of different years, we were able to reduce our emission footprint significantly. And now I have to look because it's such a high number by more than 90% in the last 10 years when we actually started to measure it. And if we look into the relevance of Scope 3 emissions to the pharma industry, then reducing our emissions is one of the key elements to support the achievements, net zero achievements of the pharma industry. So technically, this was one of our corporate achievements in producing more sustainable. On the other side, the product itself, the plastic product, is something where we have very limited possibilities to become more sustainable. We can look in different aspects in energy, in manufacturing, but the raw material remains a fossil material which has a pollution element to that. And let's face it, we have a plastic pollution problem on the world, so it's time to look into more sustainable solutions. And 2024, when we started that journey, we were looking into what is available on the market, understanding that other industries are much more advanced than the pharma industry, right? So look into food and beverages, they are like light years ahead of us. But in pharma, we're still tempted to look into how did we do the business like 10, 20 years ago. And things develop slowly. but steadily. So that was our journey. And the basic feedback from our raw material suppliers were more or less into, yeah, we have a solution, look into mass balanced drop-in solutions, which is a very fair solution, but it was too weak as having that as a solution to just say, yeah, we are now more sustainable. So, summary, a lot of desktop research, a lot of speaking to people, understanding what their experience is, listening to actually podcasts. So I was on the road to the office and I was listening to a podcast. I had two gentlemen speaking about more sustainable plastic. And then we called one and we said, hey, we need you. We need you to advise. Like, unfortunately, it was not you, Lucas. It was a different person. But that contributed to the hope that there is a sustainable bioplastic for medical grade applications. Long story cut short, we met the right people. We spoke about this. We received the first material. We did some desktop research in our quality department. We ran it through the machines, and the result was quite promising. So ultimately, roughly 2 years down the line, we had our first products in hand that gave us a lot of hope that this is commercially executable.
Okay. I mean, you brought up a lot of points here. So I would say in summary, it is you have an intrinsic motivation from, let's say, family-owned business to give a better company and a better planet back to the next generation. So that's the first thing. So intrinsic motivation. And secondly, there's the climate commitments of your customers. Your customers are all big pharma companies. They have SBTi commitments. They want to do something about Scope 3, but they cannot compromise on quality. They cannot compromise on a lot of things. And then you're eager to provide a solution. And then you looked into mass balance and said, okay, this is probably a very, I'd say, feasible solution, but many others have tried this and it doesn't seem to really cut it. So we want to have something that is, I'd say, better communicatable, because like physical content just has something to it. This is physically made from a bio material, and you can explain that very straightforward. So tell us a bit about how long did it take you? You said it was 2 years, and what were the major challenges, or did that just go through and your advice would be just do it?
You're right. I mean, just do it, right? It's so simple and so exhaustive on the same time. So it may sound easy to, we speak to a couple of people, then we receive material, we test it, and the job is done. It's actually not at the end of the day. There's a lot of work related to the material classification, first of all, to the vendor classification, understanding how do they actually do the bio material? Is it really bio, or is it tentatively something like greenwashing because it's just claiming to be bio? So you have to go through a lot of steps, individual steps of qualifying the vendor, qualifying the material. Is it applicable to medical devices? And on all these different steps, we were able to check a yes, yes, yes. Ultimately, we received samples. We were not looking at price levels or similar. We were looking at technical data sheets. And with the sampling, we went to the machine park in the manufacturing and did very precisely testing on different material, on different devices in different molds. So since you don't know how the mold is going to be impacted from the material, we worked ourselves from like less important molds, old molds, to newer, fresher ones, which are actually used in production to run our prototypes and to see how the material flows. And there's also a lot of motivation related to that, because obviously first tests are not running well. So you have to get used to the new material. In the final result, there is a strong achievement in the end result. And that is the importance. I was mentioning that we are a family-owned business. And the difference probably to large corporations or even private equity is that family-owned business, they can act a little bit more in the direction on what they actually want to do. They are less stress impacted by financial resources and other elements. So we allocated a very strong amount of labor and machine time to actually get to the point to say, yes, we can use this material up to a point that you as a customer can order 25,000 pieces, 250,000 pieces, and if you want 2.5 million pieces or even more, it's doable. You can buy them.
Yeah, I think what differentiates you and your situation in this case is that usually if you're like a publicly held company or a private equity held company, is going to be, first and foremost, we will calculate the business case. And now we come to like the Achilles heel of this biomaterials, because let's talk about cost. They're not costing the same currently because, of course, I mean, they don't have the volume, they don't have the economy of scale, they don't have 90 years of petrochemical industries being optimized to a T to be as cost effective as possible. So how do you counter, I would say, that cost factor?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The product has to be cost competitive at the end of the day. Nobody can afford a significant markup. But on the other side, you have targets set by the EU and by every single pharma company, which I know. They have their individual targets, generally between 2040 and 2050. They want to become net zero neutral. And the point here is scope 1 and 2 is very easily be doable because it's in your own situation to regulate your emissions. Scope 3 is in the value chain. Companies like us delivering to pharma companies, so they have to look much more into what is the emission protocol of their suppliers. And we're in the same situation. So we're looking into the emission protocols of our suppliers in the different elements which we buy, like carton packaging, PE bags, and so on. And it's very challenging. Not a lot of companies are so advanced as we are in terms of our emission recording data. So I very much understand the pain pharma is going through, and that's where the money is becoming more relevant. So if you take a net balance of how much is a fossil material compared to a biomaterial or even a mass balanced material, then very obviously fossil is a lot cheaper, right? So it is cheaper because the volume is factor, I don't know, 200 maybe, or even much more. The difference between mass balanced and biomaterial is actually not that much anymore. So if you get that certificate on a mass balanced product, raw material, for the price X, then the markup for a biomaterial, which we have in use, and there is not much suppliers at the moment on the market, is not that much. So first of all, it's the question of the company. Do they want to go in with a drop-in solution, which is very often a fair point because you can reduce the satellite costs like new mold, new regulatory requirements and so on to a minimum. But the real asset of bio comes when you start off the scratch with eco-design properties. And eco-design is what is going to make the big difference. So let's summarize. Material is more expensive. Yes. Eco-design has the potential to reduce costs. You have much thinner wall thicknesses, the possibility at least, because the stiffness and the rigidity of the biomaterials is better than on fossil or mass balanced solutions. You have the possibility of reducing energy consumption during the production. You need less heat. And we're talking here not about a couple of percent. We're talking about like between 30 to 50 degrees of reduced heat consumption in our case. Maybe it's different in other companies. In our case, we were quite surprised that we have to run the molds much cooler than we would do with fossil material. Means, on the other side, the material is a little bit more liquid. It provides maybe different challenges, but at that point, we are reducing energy consumption. And lastly, and that is a point which is very often not seen by procurement people, and it's actually more of a strategic embedment in pharma companies, there is a curve of adaptation in new ideas and innovation. So first level is innovators. And second stage is early adapters, and then you have the early majority. And in pharma, right now, we're between innovators and early adapters. Probably, as far as we think, we have the only solution, commercially available solution in plastic medical devices on the market. It will not take much time, and then another competitor will have a similar or same solution. So having that asset is, for a pharma company, is quite important in terms of their shareholder value. So most of them are stock listed companies. And having that as a news value to be that one step ahead of competition is something which we cannot measure in procurement prices, but more of a stock value definition. And lastly, it's about delivering the promise we want to become net zero by X point. And even so, our product is a very minor, small element in the total value chain of pharma. I believe elm-plastic has proven it's doable and your suppliers can deliver. So, dear pharma, it's up to you to make it actually happen.
If you are a medical device company and you're looking to make your devices more sustainable, there's a link in the description for you. I mean, a few points that you may make here I really like. So number one is you said, okay, like the material is more expensive, but we can do something about design. And we actually did. So design and material together plus the process are going to define the performance and also the sustainability and the cost of your product. So you can mitigate some of the costs with clever design. Very valid and very, very good point. And the second thing that you mentioned is, yeah, okay, so if you, dear customer, if you want to be net zero, we have a solution here. And I think what is implied a bit here, and that is my take on the green premium, I don't think a significant green premium works because I have seen products go on the market and have like 20, 30, 50% green premium, so are more expensive than the fossil version. And what do you see is like the adoption is just extremely slow or non-existent. So customers not willing to pay a lot more. And we see this in healthcare. I mean, in healthcare, like hospitals are squeezed for cost. So it's not that they can afford a lot to pay a lot more, but they want to be more sustainable. So my take is that if patient outcome and costs are the same, the more sustainable variant will win. So that means what you can do with that, you can gain market share. So you go into the competition and say, okay, we're same cost, same performance, but now we're more sustainable. Do you want to choose us over the competition? And usually the answer is, yeah, okay, I mean, I have no excuses now. And then they will pick you and it will take your competition 2 years to catch up because now you have something on the market and they have fear of missing out. So they want to develop something and they get it on the market and they will take 2 years as you did. And then you have 2-year head start to gain market share. So that's my take on, and that should be the strategy of how we actually can make money on this, I'd say, sustainable device thing. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very, very fair points which you're mentioning at the end of the day. But you also have to see what is the strategic target of a pharma company to actually invest into a different solution. Is it purely the statement, I want to have the same product more sustainable and without paying more money to that? Then it's probably not the fully rightly defined target, right? So we see customers who are actually acting in that way. They say, we get the feedback, hey, I want the pipette. It has to be cheaper because sustainability must be cheaper. Yeah, it doesn't work like this. We can talk about such a solution maybe 10 years down the line when you're in the mass market. The key point here is in the next 5 to maybe 10 years, the value is different to just purely the product. And as I just said, you have that corporate value, you have the shareholder value going to that, you have the early innovator status value in the market. If marketing is not capitalizing on those achievements, nothing is going to happen to the company, right? And you can buy standard or bio-based materials. If we look into the consumption of the material, which is actually going to drive the price, for the first ones in the market, the price is a little bit higher, and they have to find reasons or negotiations or a common sense with their suppliers on how can both parties capitalize on that innovation, naming, can we use our customers' trademarks in order to promote their achievements and our achievements together? Typically, pharma is a little bit restrictive on that point. But if there is a benefit to that, then we can also contribute in terms of supporting our price structure for marketing reasons, right? At the end of the day, the more demand is going to be on those sustainable products, the lower the price is going to be. Or the more you get used to that markup compared to the fossil solution. There's another aspect which is also relevant for you to look into, the financial part of the business. I had the chance to speak to a bank manager only last week, and they had a very interesting presentation on how financing, like bank finance activities, can influence the drive of sustainability. And he simplified it very, very nicely. He said they can bring in KPIs in such a way that if you as a customer are not able to comply to sustainability, you will simply not get the fundings. And then you're basically, let's say, less flexible in your investments you want to do or you need to do. And there have been cases, not in sustainability, but in other businesses in the past, where the banking sector very impressively showcased how much pressure they can actually bring into different industries. And that is something, his statement was, it's going to come, it's already coming, but it's going to become more and more and more relevant in future. So again, what is the solution? The solution is, if you need to transition to net zero, the solution is ready. You just, as a customer, have to pick it up and implement it with your partner in the supply chain.
So, I mean, I have a take on this, and there I might counter you on we're a family-owned business, and therefore we can invest more in sustainability, because what we see a lot is that private equity, they try to tap into these ESG funds. This is a thing that you're talking about, that you will only get financing if you hit certain sustainability KPIs, and you will get access to beneficial loan rates, for example. So you get financing at better conditions if you hit certain sustainability targets. And that is something that is, I would say, summarized in investor pressure. And all these SBTI commitments, I don't say that like the big pharma companies are all not intrinsically motivated or don't have intrinsically motivated people, but a lot of these commitments come from investor pressure. So they come from investor pressure to get these companies to sign up to these climate action targets. Then on top of that, there will be customer pressure. So they also have final customers who think, oh, yeah, we might want to do something on sustainability. And then what also happens, and this is what you probably are going to see, like we saw that very, very, let's say, starkly at the Pharma Pack. It was I'd say, different pharma application. It was an auto-injector. And it was this startup coming up and giving this 5-minute talk. We have now an auto-injector done with eco-design and done with biomaterials. And then what you saw is like there was a flock of people building around their booth. And 80% of this was competitors. They just wanted to figure out what the hell those guys were doing. Yeah, how do they do this? And how can I have something like this too? Is this something that you're experiencing with your product?
Sure. Of course we do. We're on different social media channels, right? And we can see which companies are following us. And interestingly, and I'm totally fine with that, our competitors are following us on social media because we use this to promote our achievements. But you see, Lucas, and it doesn't matter. They can do this, but they will be only as good as we used to be 2 steps earlier. So the attitude of an innovator is to be ahead of what is actually being marketed. And at least with us at elm-plastic, we have that very strong attitude of pushing the boundaries forward. And that is also my call to the market whenever I speak with customers. We are showcasing the 3-part pipette. It's a complex pipette for us. We have translated basically our entire portfolio to sustainable solutions. We're working now on different products, if you want, different production technologies. We have some technologies in the validation with customers, with pharma customers, targeted to very small batch manufacturing where injection molding doesn't make sense at that point. For these manufacturing methods, there's currently no sustainability available, like no sustainable material. We have reached out to our material providers and asked them, go and find new materials. We have proven our ability to execute excellence. Now that builds trust to our partners, and they're physically looking for solutions on those small batch manufacturing. And all these elements, the network, the people, the technical abilities, All this is missing with the competitors. So let them have some part of the cake, which is, by the way, not yet existing. We're still baking the cake, but let them have their share. And at the end of the day, we can only succeed by promoting our products and building the trust to long-term relationships to customers. And in particular, that point is relevant to our fast-moving world. If you are into cutting costs, the best way forward is set up a contract with your supplier on a longer term, on predefined quantities, give planning assurance. It will help everybody to be more reliable and to reduce prices. But you have to give a commitment.
Yes. I think that's a very great point that you just made about the long-term commitment. But before we come to that, as I just want to mention one point that came up with me is like, of course, your competitors are going to follow you. But the point is, there needs to be someone daring to break the line. Because in MedTech, and I see this so often, it's a lot of it is mindset. We have always done it like this. You cannot use recycling material. You cannot recycle medical waste. You can't make bioplastics viable. And then there's someone who goes out and doesn't know that this rule exists and does it. And then the customer sees, okay, it's possible. And then all the competitors, they're like, yeah, now we don't have an excuse anymore. Now we need to do it. But you will always be lagging one step behind if, like, you as an innovator, you as the one who's daring to break the rules, will still move ahead and try to find new solutions. And they will always just being chasing you.
But you remember what you said in the beginning. You said you just need to do it. And that's it.
Yeah. I think that's a very good slogan that they have there. Just do it. Yeah, and about the longer term commitments, what's your take on being able to compensate some of the, let's say, surcharge that you're currently paying on the material if you can get these longer term commitments? Because that's also, I'd say, an argument that I bring forward is, yeah, okay, but if you get your customers to switch over to bioplastics, they're not going to change back so fast because changeover cost is existing. And they will kind of also lose face if they just move to another, let's say, fossil plastic from the bioplastics that they had before, if they can get it on a, let's say, reasonable price. And then that will basically lock in that customer for a longer term period so that you have a, let's say, more protected business and a unique selling proposition that your competition will not have for 2 years. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are different models on how we can actually play this. In our industry, you have standard products and you have customer-specific products. So let's assume all products are produced in molds. Then standard products are based on our own molds and customer can change as they want, basically, because they don't have the property on the mold. If we look at the customer-specific product designs, then the mold, even so we manufacture the mold belongs to the customer and they cannot change it as easy. They also cannot change from one manufacturing site to another as easy. It's possible, but it requires a lot of work and labor and change control documentation, which is one of the scare patterns, if you want. Nobody in pharma wants to get involved into change control unless you really have to. And when you have a change, it's not going away in a very short period of time. It will follow you for months, if not years. So let's pretend we have a customer-specific mold design, eco design, product design. So very specific wall thicknesses allocated to the machines. It's not going to be as simple to replace it with a different supplier. And that is the point where long-term relationships become more important. You only get those when you trust your partner in the mentality, in the capability, and in the service they provide. So mentality is, how do we speak to each other? Are we on eye level? Do we understand the problems and needs of the counterpart? The capability is maybe also scalability. Can they up or downscale volume without putting me in front of court because I'm breaching a contract, for example? Can they actually provide the output? And these are the elements where we see to a certain extent, a safeguarding of our business. We have in our case of elm-plastic, we have the knowledge on how eco-design not only should look like in theory, but also in practical execution. And we, as I said earlier, we can swap from one day to another in producing bio solutions. The material we use is a bio-based plastic. If we would go into our pipette, into our standard portfolio, this would be easily doable with mass balanced plastic. So there we don't need to change the mold. If we go into the bio-based plastic, we have to develop case by case by case the molds. So we start with the first customer request. They ask us for a bio solution. The mold is going to be designed and then manufactured exclusively for this customer. They will have the possibility to market that achievement of theirs under their own name in the market and get all the marketing benefits as we spoke about them earlier. It will pull other customers to follow. Let them go to other suppliers. Let them gain their experience. If they achieve, great. We have a supplier from whom we can learn in the market. We're not isolated. If they want to stay with us and benefit from our knowledge, which is existing by now, we're very happy to accommodate them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good strategy and a very valid point that you need long-term relationships and support from your supplier. That's not only the case with pharma companies and their, I'd say, part suppliers, but this is also the case with part suppliers and their material suppliers. So choose your material suppliers wisely and just don't go for just the cheap material, because cheap material without the regulatory support, yeah, you know how that turns out. Just give me the cheapest one doesn't ever work as a material selection strategy.
Right. We would know our suppliers, and currently you would have an issue in getting your containers back to Europe, right?
Yeah. That's very true. Very true. So you launched this pipette at, I think it was CPHI last year, 2025, and then you presented it at Pharma Pack. So how was the customer feedback? How is it gaining traction, so to say?
Well, first of all, the feedback was very exciting. So it was perceived as a great achievement to be on the market and having a bio solution. There was a lot of questioning around the material and how bio is bio actually. And we were like, I didn't mention it so far, but just on the material properties, so the raw material, the bio pipette cradle to gate is emission negative. So we're actually having, how should I say, less emissions than we're compared to the fossil material. It's only with the incineration where we are ending up roughly with 60% less emissions compared to a fossil solution. So you can turn it in any direction you want. Biomaterial is going to be the better solution in future. And that was the feedback we received we were able to give to different customers visiting us. And CPHI is 3 days, pretty hectic, a lot of interactions, a lot of talks. And you have to see also at our solution, which we're providing. So we started off with the pipette. That's the product as a hero. That is our problem, which we wanted to resolve. And once we had achieved this, we were looking into what comes next to the pipette. And when we ship the pipette from A to B, you need a PE bag, you need a carton, you need a pallet, you need actually a truck to bring it from our factory to the customer. And we developed a modular system. So all elements, if not already changed to sustainable solutions, are also available in sustainable solutions. The carton is fully recyclable, made from recycling paper. The PE bags are available in post-industrial recycled material. Even the tape to seal the cartons is available now as a paper tape with rubber glue to that. And our little flagship element is the transportation. We can provide with a specific system and net zero emission truck transportation within Europe. In brackets, on deliveries which are ideally repeating constantly, same line, same volume and weight. That makes it currently easy for our freight forwarder to calculate these certificates At the end of the day, as a customer, you receive a certificate that grants you 100% emission-free logistics. So we're turning the metal, if you want. We're having all these different aspects, and we can let our customer choose if they want to be on just the product as a sustainable element, or maybe just the trucking as a sustainable element. And in between are the different bits and pieces where they can pick and choose. Since we spoke about costs, it's not for free, that markup or that service, but it's also within a very affordable range of cost impact. So speaking to the customers on CPHI, we have 2 projects derived out of this where we're currently working on bringing sustainability into the market.
Yeah. So thank you very much for those insights. And I think you have a very good, let's say, value offering. And what I see with players who play this right, they don't have sustainability as just a gimmick, but they have it embedded within, I'd say, a service system with the customer front and center. So whatever the customer wants, they'll get it. And the customer is right in terms of taste. So I think we have basically covered the 4 factors that are pushing MedTech and pharma into more sustainability. We had the investor pressure with SBTi commitments. We had the customer pressure. We have the competitive pressure. But now let's talk about the last one, which is the regulations. So what's your take on what regulations are coming down the road in terms of forcing this on the industry?
So currently, there is a very stable regulation since years in the market. And what is the regulation in the food industry is the PPWR, I believe, or A, it's called.
Packaging.
Yeah, right. The packaging regulation, which does not apply to pharma, as far as I know, at least. And again, if we look into different industries, they are almost light years ahead of us in pharma. Recycling is much deeper embedded in waste collection, in segregation of the waste into different bins and containers. And it's not that it's not possible for pharma. You had 2 people from, I believe it was J&J in your podcast, which explained on not on their solution, on their challenges in getting it done. So that's a multi-billion company where they said, we want to actually do this. And it took them 4 years to pass the regulatory process in, I believe it's the sterilization of like wound care material or something like this, to be reused in the same product properties. Downscaling is most likely easier, downwards recycling, but having it embedded into medical device product streams, there needs a lot of willingness from authorities to actually enable this. And sometimes it provides the feeling that the solution is already here, but the implementation takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a little different take. So first of all, the PPWR, some of the legal requirements do not apply to pharma and MedTech, which is the minimum recycling content and the minimal recyclability. However, there are other requirements that are applicable to pharma and MedTech. So that's the first one. And then I think what your take is that sometimes it just needs a little, let's say, courage from the bureaucracy to make it happen. It's like, I think they're like standing on the gas and the brake pedal on the same time. So number one is they want to push for more sustainability. They want to push for more eco-design. And some regulation that is coming down the line, such as eco-design for sustainable products regulation and the PPWR, they're pushing on more sustainability. But on the other hand, like if we talk about recycling of contaminated medical waste, that's like, oh, but this could be a safety issue. We have proven that it's safe to recycle these plastics, but if you need a permit and there's like a bureaucrat that needs to sign off on this, it's going to be very difficult to convince them that you're allowed to do it.
That's exactly what you're going to need at the end of the day. You need somebody who takes the liability in I'm signing off that process so that others can actually do it. And right now, except of J&J, which have value a lot their endeavor in getting that done as a showcase, there is not much available on the market. And incineration is the way to go to. Another point just to mention, because I think it's equally important, in particular in Germany and Europe, where we need to also give hope to the future, right? With that whole aspect of sustainability, there's a lot of business potential for upcoming innovations, if you want, at the end of the day. We have to rethink concepts differently in a new way in order to actually embed it into the markets and make it happen. If you speak to the existing recyclers right now, they have their fair points to mention that PLA, as an example, is not ideally recyclable. And they don't say ideally, they say it's not recyclable, but it's not recyclable because of economical reasons. Technically and chemically, it is possible. So we just have to look at topics in a different way and actually get it done.
Yeah. What makes this J&J case that you mentioned, where they take the staplers, they decontaminate it and then recycle the materials, is that they showed that it's possible. And it's the same thing with you, with your pipette. It's like you showed that it's possible. And with the recyclers, like, it also is the same thing as in medical. It's like, it's never been done before, so it's impossible. I would say a lot of it is a mindset thing. Usually, if you have a sink swim separation method, it's not that you cannot separate the polyolefin from a PLA. It's easily possible. PLA sinks to the bottom, polyolefin swim. So you can shred it, you can put it in a water bath, and then you can separate it. However, what comes out, PLA, is not a commonly recycled material. With the J&J case, I know that they have collected, I think it was 3.5 or 4 tons of plastic in about 4 years in Switzerland. And then if you go to a recycler and tell them, hey, I have these 4 tons of plastics, would you like to recycle it? And then they're like, yeah, come back if we have 100 times more. So it's also a little bit, this recycling topic is also a bit of a volume game. So if you can just get enough people to join it, it starts to be economical. So that's my take on all of this.
It's the chicken and egg question, isn't it? Price is expensive now because nobody's buying it. So if a lot of people are going to buy, prices are going to drop and recycling is going to be relevant.
Yes. And the same thing is for biomaterial. It's you just need someone to break the line, and then it's going to happen. Cool. So Bastien, what advice would you like to give to our listeners in terms of developing sustainable, I would say, medical device?
Go do it. Doing is so much cooler than wanting to do. I'm kidding. I understand that there is a lot of time, energy, money invested into that. On the same time, I also believe we can like it or not, it's going to happen, right? So it's going to happen that sustainability will be much more embedded into our day and night activities. So the sooner companies get started in getting familiar with what does it actually mean for me in terms of reporting for my organization, in terms of implementation of products, the better they are going to be ready for the future, which is going to come. So be hopeful. There are more and more product suppliers in terms of raw material, plastic raw material suppliers on the market. It shows that there is a dynamic which we just need to get on.
Completely agree. I think that those players who will invest the time now and the resources now to become more sustainable in MedTech will have a strategic advantage in the future. Since the regulations will come, since the competitors will be out with products, since customers will demand it, investor pressure will mount up, and then you will not be able to do it without it. So my take is that you have one product generation left where you can afford to ignore it. And after that, it's done. You need to do it.
I agree.
Cool. Good. Bastien, any last words?
Thank you, Lucas. It was good fun talking to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this was Bastien Manuel. He's the commercial director at elm-plastic. And until the next time.